Hey everybody, Caleb here. Today I've got a slightly different project. We're going to build a tool, but this time we're going to build a tool I already have. So I got a call last week asking if I was able to build one of these for a gentleman in North Carolina, and I said, yeah, I could probably do that. So here we are. I figured I'd video this in case anyone out there was also interested in maybe building one of these. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. I've got the stuff laid out here that I'm going to need. It's really not a whole lot. So I'll set this one aside. I don't think we're going to need it much more, and we'll get started on this one. So I've got basically 3 things sitting here, and these are all the supplies I'll need. There's a couple more tools that are required for this thing, but you know, we'll get to that as we get to that. So I've got a Nicholson file here. This is a single cut file, 6 inches, and the first thing you really want to do is figure out which way this needs to go onto your block. Now, these files are really, really close to flat, but like 99% of the time, they have a bow to them, and you need to figure out which way it is bowed. I am fairly certain that this one has an underbow in this orientation. That means that it's high on this end and this end compared to the middle, so it does this. Now that is a very, very small amount. It is virtually flat, but it does have a very slight bow to it. What I do now that I know that, I'm actually going to go ahead and mark with Sharpie on here so I remember that this side is the bottom. So I'll just do a little O for out. So that's on there now. I want that convex side facing out. So the concave side goes against the block. So I'm almost ready to go ahead and epoxy this thing on here. What I'm going to do first is actually trim off the tang before I glue it on there. I think that's going to help me out a little bit. I'm going to accomplish this with the Dremel and a cutting tool and just cut that tang off of there. It's not too complicated. Just gotta go slow and be nice and careful about it. So next time you see this, this will be without tang. So now, there we are, sans tang. We're now ready to epoxy this to the block. I think it's going to be easiest to do while it's square because I am going to hold it down. So I've got a little piece of cardboard and a little piece of plastic as a spreader. And now I've got some 2-part epoxy I'm going to mix. Well, that's way more than I wanted, so that ought to do. Making sure we're well mixed here. The bottom of this is flat. It's not super smooth, but it is flat. The other side is not flat. It's where I cut it off, and I cut it off by hand, so it's not, but this side is flat. I think we'll have enough texture on the file that it should stick real well with this epoxy. I believe that's probably going to work. I'll set it on there and give it a good look over. I'm going to try and center it on there. I think that will work best. And now, what I'm going to do is get me one of these. And that'll help hold that down there. I'll probably get one or two more. Prevent it from wandering off. But that should work pretty good. It's supposed to be 5-minute epoxy, but I imagine it's going to take a little while. I'll probably give this well over an hour to sit. It's just so that I know it's totally set up. It'll sit just like that for a little while, and then we can come back to it. So this ended up sitting overnight, and it's now very hard, the epoxy, so that's good. You can see I've got a shape traced on there. I'm gonna start trying to cut this out to this shape. This is rough, you know, it's not an exact science on this one. I'll get it cut down to that first, and then we can start really shaping this. This is really just taking the bulk off. A lot of the shaping is really done after that point to get it to feel good. You know, I've got some more grinding to do yet to round these edges off, but we're getting closer. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. I am going to end up cutting this by hand because that's what I have available. Now it's really time to get the shaping going on here, and I'm going to do a lot of this on this spindle sander just because it's the tool I have that works the best for what I want to do. I'll end up going to my Dremel and using the Dremel quite a bit as well, but we'll knock some off on this first, and I'll probably use quite a few other things, but we'll start here. So this just got finished getting ground down on the grinder, and I've rounded the edges off on both ends of the file. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking the coarse sandpaper, and I'm just kind of finishing that off so it matches up with the wood really well. I've got a whole bunch of these barrel sanders for the Dremel, so I'm not too concerned about hitting them on that steel. That front's looking really good. You can see it's really rounded over all the way, so it comes all the way off. So you're never going to really run into anything hard with the on this end. I've just got to replicate that now on the other side. And what I'm really trying to show you here is that the wood matches up perfectly to the file. So I've got a perfect smooth run. You know, I did the shaping of the file with the grinding wheel, and then it transitions perfectly into the wood. That's really what I'm aiming for here. And actually, I think that's just about perfect. So we're getting really close to done with this thing. A lot of the important shaping is already done. What I've really got to do now is start to give this thing a good feel, see what's comfortable, and I think right now it's a little thick in the middle. I think taking that down some will really help. I could do this any number of ways on any number of tools. Because the Dremel's out, I'm going to kind of use it, see how I like that. The other thing is on mine, I have a couple of recesses carved in for my fingers. It definitely makes it a lot more comfortable. So I'm going to try to carve some of those in on this one as well. And this one, I used the Dremel tool for it. I'll probably use it again here. So I've got a little bit more shaping to do, and a lot of this now is we're getting into the fine shaping of what's comfortable. So you saw me carve the trough into this side. I went ahead and carved another trough into the other side. That way it's a little more ambidextrous, so you could use it in either hand. And either way, it works really well. And the whole point of that is to kind of get a little bit more grip. So there's a little bit of form there for your fingers to fit into, and it does fit really well. Your thumb fits on one and fingers in the other. So this way, whether you're a lefty or a righty, you can hold on to it fairly well. All that I have left to do now is kind of round these edges off, and that'll be pretty much the end of the shaping. I think I'll just grab a hand file and knock those edges over. There's a little bit more sanding I want to do. You can probably see there's a little bit of burning in here. I'd like to take some of that out, but I'll knock the edges off with a file, sand that out, and then we'll start talking about finish. So I'm just going to use this long file and round these edges over. I could do this, like most jobs on here, with any number of tools, but I really just need to break that edge. And this is handy. It won't take me much time at all. Just like that, all those corners are rounded over, they're no longer sharp. So I'll finish sanding this up and then we can start talking about a finish for this thing. So I think I've got this thing just about the way I like it, sanded wise, rounded over. It feels really good. It's very comfortable. Now, I'm going to just put a coat or two of boiled linseed oil on here. And the reasoning behind that is I want this to be fairly customizable. You know, I'm building this for someone else and sending it to him. So if he decides that it's not quite the shape of his hand, he can very easily sand some off and then wipe it down again. And we're just as sealed as we were after I'm putting this coat on here. So it's a good coating for the wood, help, kind of seal it up, so you're not too worried about moisture problems. But also it opens itself to be customizable by whoever's using it. I'm putting it on probably a little thick just because it's the first coat of anything this wood's had on it. I'll wipe it down with the clean part. And just like that, that file is looking really good. The handle feels really good. It's actually probably a little nicer than mine. This being like one of the very first things that I did was put this together. So this one is probably a little nicer. So a couple of tips for using things like this. If you were going to do this, there's a couple of things. I would definitely use a hard wood. The harder the better for the handle. I used some maple, and that's very hard. The reason for that is how many times have I used mine for a blunt object to, as a hammer. It's definitely a multi-tool along with being a file. You can whack anything into place you need. It's a good solid object, so I would definitely recommend going a hardwood on this. Also, that way it's going to last a while and be fairly durable. The other thing is, when you're using this, like with most good tools, you can screw up what you're doing very quickly. Just like with very sharp chisels or very good power tools, you can screw up very fast. So you have to be very delicate with these, very careful not to take off too much, because it's easy with the file. Like a lot of people suggest doing the long sandpaper beams, and it takes a little while to screw up doing that. This is way faster, and some people say that it's a little more accurate if you know what you're doing, but you can definitely screw up your frets way faster with a file. So it's something you gotta be cautious of. Other than that, I think that's just about done. That's as nice a thing as I think you could make for the time we spent on this. I will get ready to box this up and send this off to the person who asked me to build it for him. So, hope you enjoyed watching this little tool build video. You know, I think if you were interested in building one, it's not too complicated. So, thanks for watching, and I will see you later.